Hey, I'm Steve Rhode, the old Get Out Debt guy, and today's episode might just flip everything you thought you knew about being broke. Because we've all learned those being broke lessons the hard way. But here's the ugly truth. When you have the least money, you end up paying the most. Fees, interest, time, missed opportunities. Being in debt doesn't just drain your wallet, it steals your future. Now, this episode is called Too Broke to Win, Why Being in Debt Costs More Than You Think. And once you see how the system is stacked against you, you won't look at debt the same way again. Joining me as always is Damon Day, the new Get Out Debt guy, and the guy people call when they're stuck and need a real way out. Say hello, Damon.
Hello, Damon.
Damon, let's kick it off with this. You know who gets the best deals on money? The people who don't need it. But the broke? They get payday loans, late fees, 29% interest just for trying to survive. So let's unpack why being broke is so expensive and how folks can finally break the cycle.
Yeah, in fact, I tell clients all the time, by the time they come to me, they're, I've tried to get consolidation loans. I've tried this, I've tried that. And I say, yeah, you silly person, consolidation loans are only for people that don't need them. That's
I
not
know.
true in every case, but for the most part, it's like they'll throw money at you if your credit is great and you have so much available cash you don't need it. But when you're desperate and in need of money to make the bills, they're like, whoa, I don't want to give this person money. They actually need it.
Well, the funny part is the last podcast that I did by myself was about rebooting your financial life. And it's so true because people who don't take action, people who, like, for example, don't contact you at damonday.com, DAMONDAY.com, who just stay stuck in the rut, don't realize that they end up spending so much more for things that they don't have to, just because they're stuck. I mean, here's an example for you. You know that people who are in debt and struggling and have bad credit pay 77% more for home insurance than people who don't.
Yeah. They essentially pay more. If you're in debt and don't have cash, you pay more for everything. Everything.
Yeah.
When you really break it, I mean, we have the obvious examples, like, you can't go to Costco and really stock up unless you're, if you're broke, you have no money.
Right.
People, they'll go, oh, well, if I go to Costco, I'll buy in bulk and I'm going to, save this. Or even things like, web hosting and, anything you buy, online for business or whatever it is, right? You always see hey, if you pay up front.
Yeah, pay
right,
annually.
Yeah, you pay annually, you'll get the last 2 months free. I mean, there's deals like that all the time where if you pay ahead of time, you're going to pay overall less money if it's a service that you're going to be paying for monthly anyway. But people that don't have the money will pay monthly because it's easier to pay that $14.95 a month rather than $100 up front for the whole year. And then you say, oh, well, I'll put it on a credit card so I'll get the discount.
Right.
Well, that doesn't work if you're paying 25 or 30% interest on the credit card.
Way back in my real estate days, when I was selling country property, people never asked me, so what's the total finance charge going to be on this purchase? They always ended up asking, so what will the payment be?
Yeah.
They were just thinking in minimum payment mentality, not realizing, dude, you got to break the cycle because this is killing you.
Well, that's a big difference between how wealthy individuals tend to think about purchases and how people that don't have a lot of money think about it. A wealthy person goes out, they're going to buy a car, and they go, okay, how much is that car?
Right.
Oh, it's $50,000. Okay, I'm going to buy it for $50,000. Somebody that doesn't have the funds to do that, like you said, oh, it's $500 a month, $700 a month, $800 a month, right? And then that car is going to cost them $65,000 versus the $50,000. So they spent $15,000 more on the exact same car
just for the
because
payment.
They weren't in a position to be able to actually afford the car without somebody else getting involved in the transaction with them.
So to give you another story from the real estate days, I was very concerned when I started my real estate company. I wanted to make sure that everybody understood the whole transaction, understood the finance rates. And so I would sit there with the contract and I would explain every step of it. And people their eyes would just glaze over. They weren't interested. And so Eventually, it just came to, okay, just sign here.
Yeah. Well, and anybody listening to this podcast is going to be like, no shit, Steve. Life's easier if you have money.
Right.
Right. So we're not just stating the obvious, like, make more money. Life will be easier to be cheaper. We're just stating that. And then we're going to talk about things that you can do so you can shift from being, broke both literally and kind of in that broke mindset and get yourself to a place where you can operate from a place of abundance, because life is easier and cheaper when you can afford it.
Well, here's a good example. So we talk about how credit card interest rates are really high and people are paying up to 30% interest for carrying balances. And in fact, the interest rate is actually the least important factor when selecting a credit card, because if you can pay your debt off in full each month, you pay no interest. It doesn't matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just limping along, and not only are you paying the highest interest rates out there, but you're also probably paying late fees that accumulate too if you're just barely getting by. In 2022, credit card late fees alone were $14.5 billion that people paid.
Yeah. And, the first step in making this transition, and I know it's going to be obvious because of what we always talk about, but the first step is you got to have a plan to get rid of the debt. I don't care if you owe 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. Right. It doesn't matter. Yeah, we want to make more money, get a side hustle, get a better job, all that stuff. But if you have $50,000 in debt, you're paying about $1,000 a month in just interest.
Right.
So yeah, what's easier? Having a bankruptcy wipe that out and giving you $1,000 a month raise immediately, or going out and finding a job that's going to pay you $1,000 a month more? Or maybe you could do both at the same time, and now we're $2,000 a month.
Well, this is where it just pisses me off, because you get the personal finance gurus out there, you can insert whatever name you want, that try to give you the impression that somehow just being stuck in your debt for years is more virtuous than following the math. And so, I don't understand why they do that, because it just keeps people stuck in a situation where they just get broker every day instead of getting on top of it.
Well, this is where hyperbolic discounting comes into
I love
play.
that word.
If you've never heard that word, look it up. Hyperbolic discounting.
Yep.
This is why you are going to retire broke if you don't understand hyperbolic discounting. And very simply, it's essentially, in layman's terms, putting more emphasis on the decisions and the outcomes of those decisions today than the decisions and the outcomes in the future.
Yeah.
You're essentially putting more weight on, oh my gosh, if I file bankruptcy, oh my gosh, if I settle debt, my credit score is going to get hurt. You're focusing more on that than, but if I do that when I'm 65, I might have $1 million in my Roth IRA. So here's what I want everybody to do that's listening to this podcast. I don't care how old you are. Let's say you're 40 years old. What I want you to do is have your 65-year-old self have a conversation with you right now.
Yep.
And your 65-year-old self, let's say you're getting ready to retire from your job and you've been carrying 50 grand in debt on and off, through your 40s, 50s, 60s. You're getting ready to retire. You really don't have much of a retirement, a little bit in your 401k, not much. And you've got Social Security, hopefully, that's still there 25 years from now. Who knows? Maybe. And your boss comes to you and says, you know what? Here's what I want to do for you. I want to give you a good send-off. I'm going to give you $1 million in a Roth IRA.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to say, sweet, what's the catch? And your boss can say, all right, here's the catch. You're going to have bad credit for a few years in your mid-40s. And 65-year-old you's going to say, okay, I don't give a rat's ass about what my credit score was in my mid-40s.
Right, exactly.
I want the $1 million. So, but 65-year-old you has to convince 40-year-old you
today
that $1 million is much more valuable than your credit score in your mid-40s. Because when you're 65, you're not going to give a shit about what your credit score was in your mid-40s. You're going to care about, I have $1 million.
I love that example.
And if you don't have any money when you're 65, you're going to be screaming at your 40-year-old self that says, your credit score doesn't matter. Get out of the damn debt, please. I don't care about credit. But hyperbolic discounting has us put more emphasis on the immediate ramifications rather than taking a step back and saying,
Yeah.
what would 65-year-old me want me to do right now? Would they want me to get out of this debt? Because if you're paying $1,000 a month in interest right now and you're 40 years old, and you can wipe that debt out. I don't care how you wipe it out, whether it's a bankruptcy, a settlement. I don't even care if you do the Dave Ramsey baby steps and it doesn't matter how you do it. Sure, the math is going to be different for each thing, but you have to put together a plan to get out of that debt as quickly as you can. And then go online and get a hold of a financial calculator and put in whatever the age is right now and what that $1,000 a month would be by the time you retired.
Oh, yeah.
Because that $1,000 a month, you're spending it right now.
Use the calculator on getoutofdebt.org. It's on the right-hand side of the page, and it'll show you exactly how much money you're throwing away by delaying getting out of debt.
Yeah. You could take that and you're saying, you're spending $1,000 a month in interest if you got 50 grand in debt, right? And so it's not costing you $1,000 a month. It's costing you whatever that nest egg would be if you redirected that, if you had that debt gone and redirected that $1,000 a month, into your 401k, into a Roth IRA, up to the limit or whatever it was, even a regular investment account, and look at what it would be by the time you're 65 or 67. That's actually how much it's going to cost you to carry that $50,000. And that's why you have to step back and not think about, and not put too much weight on what about my credit score right now? Because 25 years from now, your credit score right now is not going to matter. But you being able to put $1,000 a month into a retirement account will matter hugely 25 years from now.
Well, let me give you another example. So I'm 65 and I talk to people who are, older than that. I was talking to somebody yesterday who was 80. And what do you think is more frightening? Being 45 and potentially having bad credit for a year or two, or being 80 when you can't work anymore and you never saved enough money and you're worried about just being able to afford rent? That is frightening.
But that's where the hyperbolic discounting comes in. People, just as a species, we have an inability, for the most part, to put ourselves in that situation. Oh, that's in the future. I've got time. I can fix that. That's in the future. But, I'm younger than you, but I'm 47. And I got to tell you, it goes fast. It goes fast. It goes faster. When you're 25, you get to 45 a hell of a lot faster than you realize you're going to get to 45.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain that, but my body feels 47, but in my mind, I'm still like 25. And I think everybody's like this. I don't walk around thinking of myself as a 47-year-old man. My brain doesn't think of me as, if I see somebody that's 50 years old, I go, that's an old guy.
Yeah.
And then I realize, shit, I'm that old guy. But I don't, in a day-to-day, my brain doesn't make me feel like I'm that age. But it just goes so fast. And time is the one thing that you're not going to get back. So, you got to realize that debt is costing you much more than you realize. It's not just that $1,000 a month. So the first step in taking yourself from broke and life costing you so much money, the first step to extricate yourself from that situation is to get rid of, however you need to do it. I don't care how you do it.
In the shortest period of time. That's key. That's key. None of these 5 or 10 year repayment plans when you're in your 40s, because that's how you're pissing away $1 million in retirement, because you lose that time. That time is something you can't get back. Damon, I have to tell you something. Not only am I exceedingly proud and, my chest is puffed out right now because I can die complete because I have taught you all about hyperbolic discounting.
Oh, dude, I was the king. I was the king of that, man. I was like, dude, like I said, I was, when we met, I was in my how old was I when we met? I was in my late 20s, I think, right? Maybe early 30s.
Early 30s.
early 30s.
Yeah.
And yeah, I felt, dude, I got so much time. Got plenty of time,
Yeah.
and it goes fast. It really does.
Yeah, I worry now about people who are delaying retiring because they all of a sudden realize they don't have enough money, or they're living just on Social Security and they don't have any extra money. When you look at the amount of money that the average person has when they retire, I think the average net worth the median, the person in the middle, net worth is like 50 grand.
Well, I think I've learned the secret to life is
Hmm.
you have to get to a position where compound interest is working for you
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
not against you. And you need to get to a point where you have enough money invested and saved, however you want to do that, where you can retire and you can relax, you can enjoy this thing that we call life. And even if you have the ability to work until you die, do you really want to?
No, you don't.
Well,
Uh,
what, go ahead.
no, there are other things too, not just credit that end up keeping you poor. And this is not a conspiracy theory statement, but the world is set up to keep you poor because companies make more money that way.
Yeah. Well, you
You,
have less options. When you don't have money and you have bad credit,
yeah,
you have less options. So it gives these institutions, these companies, the ability to take advantage of somebody, whereas somebody in a much better position would look at what the offer is and say, oh, hell to the no, right? Like a
right.
payday loan or something like that. Somebody that didn't need the payday loan
Mm-hmm.
is not going to look at that, even if they get the phone call, the advertisement, or whatever, and they're like, so you want to charge me 20% a
Yeah,
month,
no. Mm-mm.
and I'm gonna give you the title to my car, and I see these things all the time where like, oh, it's a secured loan, we're gonna use the title of your car, and they're still charging like 35%,
Yeah,
and they have the car too. But now, if you don't need that money, if you're fine, you're gonna say there's no way that makes any sense. But if you're about ready to get evicted, right? This is how you trap people into this kind of stuff,
yep.
because the person's sitting there going, okay, this, I know it's a bad deal, but if I don't have this cash right now, I'm probably going to get evicted next week. So I have to do it. And then that buys me some time to figure out how to get back ahead of it. But then you get so deep into that hole that you can't easily dig your way out. But that's why you need to take a step back. I don't care where you're at in that cycle. And you got to get out of it, because even if you're not that deep yet, where you're getting payday loans and title loans and things like that, which are horrible, by the way, when you have debt, let's just go back to the 50 grand, because it's a nice round number, and you're paying $1,000 a month. Here's how you really need to think about it, because a lot of people compartmentalize it. They go, okay, that's 50 grand. It's over here on the left side. I'm not going to use those credit cards anymore. I'm going to try to pay those down. Whatever extra I have, I'm going to pay down. And they just try to think, okay, I'm going to get that taken care of, and I'm going to start using cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you have 50 grand in debt or 10 grand in debt, doesn't matter, and you're paying 25% interest, you have to realize that you can't compartmentalize that. Everything that you buy,
Mm-hmm.
every dollar that you spend, whether you're using a credit card or not, is now costing you 25% interest, because every dollar you spend on that McDonald's Slurpee is a dollar you can't throw at the principal
Right.
of that debt. So that dollar, even if you're paying cash out of your pocket, you're now paying interest on that Slurpee. So everything that you buy while you're carrying debt is going to cost you that interest.
Yeah, and also, let's put it into context too, that carrying that amount of debt, paying that amount of interest every month, not only costs you money, but again, it gets back to time. So you're going to have to work 60 hours that month at a job you might not like, just because you have to feed that bill.
Yeah. Yeah. And just imagine, just take your situation right now and imagine what your budget would look like, what your life would look like if that debt just magically went away. If you
Yeah.
woke up tomorrow and whatever debt you had was gone, imagine how much stress that would remove from your life.
Yeah.
How,
And could you do better? Right?
yeah.
Could you learn from the current situation and just do better moving forward?
But, and Steve keeps bringing this up too, time. Now you might say, look, I have to make more money, but I don't have time to make more money. Well, start thinking about how much time you waste because you're broke and in debt.
Yeah.
Things like this, little things you don't even think about. Maybe you can't afford to fill the gas tank all the way up because you don't have the extra money. So you're going to the gas station now 3 or 4 times a week, just throwing in $10.
Mm-hmm.
How much extra time are you now spending going to the gas station that could be spent doing something more productive, right? How much time are you spending juggling bills and getting on the phone with the utility bill and trying to set up a payment plan because they're about to shut off the power or whatever? That's all just time suck. It's time suck because you're broken in debt that you wouldn't be spending if you weren't broken in debt, and you can redirect that time to something more productive, a side hustle, starting an online business, whatever that needs to be. But being in broke prevents you, and many times, from being able to make more money.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as I said before, it's not just credit cards that do this, just banking, for example. There are things about banking, number one, that drive me crazy. This is the number one is
the number one one?
The number one reason. Yes, the number one. Debit cards, right? Banks have brainwashed people into using debit cards, but not because it is a great personal finance move, but because banks make money from every time somebody swipes a debit card. It's a money-making enterprise. And also making money at the banks, overdraft fees. So last year alone, there was over $6 billion in overdraft fees paid. You've got about $225 a year for the average family that's paying overdraft fees.
And we did a podcast, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, on the CFPB going away.
Yeah.
And basically kind of making a wild, wild west again with the overdraft fees and, not capping the fees at a certain amount. And it's going to get worse. So our solution to that is turn off overdraft protection immediately on your checking account. Let the bill bounce. Trust me, whoever tried to charge your card will reach out like, hey, brother, by the way, your card didn't go through. Oh, my bad.
Well,
Try it again.
Here's another hidden tax on people who are just getting by: transportation costs, right? Because if you're driving a beat or broke car, we've all had to do that, you end up paying more for repairs in the long run because it just is not as reliable.
Yeah, and you put off maintenance, right? And so it makes those eventual repair bills even more because you're going to have more breakdowns if you're not able to keep up with there's a reason you're supposed to, they have those maintenance schedules. That's to keep that car in good working condition. So if you're having to put off things like oil changes and transmission flushes and a brake job, you start to hear the brake squeal a little bit, but oh man, this is going to be $1,000. I don't want to do that. And eventually, when you get around to you have to do it. It's like,
now it's more expensive.
Yeah. Now not only do you need pads, but you need new rotors too.
Right.
Can you just turn the rotors? No, man, you ground them down to the point where you need new rotors.
Yeah.
So now that $1,000 brake job is now $2,000 or $1,800 because they had to get you for 4 new rotors.
I think we both know people that's happened to.
I'm raising my hand if you can't see. I've been there, man. I know. This is how I know what it's like. I've been broke. Trust me. I'm like, nah, that squeak's not that bad. If I let off the brake a little bit, nobody
just don't push it as hard.
Exactly. But again, it goes back to being in debt and not having any money makes life more expensive. And it's like this vicious cycle. The more debt you have, the broker you are because you're paying that. And then the more expensive everything is because you can't afford to get ahead of anything.
Mm-hmm. So prepare now because I don't know if you've noticed, Damon, but the food prices are going way up. Dog food, the dog food that we buy for our dog, last month, the same size bag was $22. This month, it's $32. It's the same stuff.
Well, your big thing is always saying, tell your future self what kind of dog food or cat food you're going to want to eat in retirement.
Right.
You're going to have to amend that. This stuff's getting so expensive, you're not even going to be able to afford dog food.
Well, people who are not dealing with their debt and they're limping along and they're dragging it with them, they end up spending more for the necessities in life because it takes up a greater percentage of their available income. And
Well,
so,
100%. I mean, that's a big problem. If, food prices, if I make $1 million a year and, somebody, my friend makes $50,000 a year, if
mhm,
we go to the same store, we pay the same price. But that dog food doesn't affect somebody that makes $1 million a year the way it affects somebody that
right,
makes $50,000 a year. So yeah, it might be a nuisance and they notice it on the receipt, but it's not going to be, something that changes. Okay, now I got to make sure I put my thermostat up to 80 this month,
right,
rather than 70,
right.
right? But if you don't make a lot of money, you still have to eat. You still have to have shelter. So inflation and cost increases disproportionately affect
Yep.
lower incomes much more.
And keep them stuck.
Yeah. And
All
so
right. So,
go ahead.
so Damon, I want you to, for somebody right now that has been carrying 20, 50, $100,000 worth of debt with them, and they've just been limping along, and they're saying, I can't do anything. Emotionally, I can't do anything. I'll feel like a failure, a loser. Other people tell me I need to pay this all off. What do you say?
I have this vision in my head, at the end of the movie scene where there's an explosion in the background and the main character's just in slow motion walking away, like all
Hmm.
cool, doesn't even flinch when it explodes and it's on fire.
Yeah.
That's your debt behind you.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
pile it up behind you, throw some gas on it, light a match, and just walk away all cool. Like, who gives a shit?
Right. In
That's,
slow motion.
yeah, just like all cool and, walk out the movie.
Well,
So,
I love two things, Damon. I love. What did I say before? My first verse, but one
1-1.
is 1-1. Okay, 1-1 on this one is that you are there and available for people to talk to if they have debt questions, problems, concerns. I did it for 30 years. I passed the torch. Damon is doing it now.
It's just math wrapped in emotion, as Steve always says.
I'm telling you, man, I could die today.
We got to get rid of the emotion and then talk about how things actually work. It's all a big game,
Yep.
right? And I'm not saying just willy-nilly everybody just stop paying their debt. That's not what I'm saying.
No, you need a plan. You need a map.
Exactly. But whatever that is, we have to get rid of the debt is costing you your life. And again,
Yeah.
go back to what would 65-year-old you say to 40-year-old you when faced with the decision of $1 million or bad credit, and bad credit for a couple of years in your 40s, or no retirement and $100 bags of dog food that you're eating, but your credit score was fine in your 40s. Your credit
Yeah.
score is probably what got you into this mess in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, who cares what your credit score is? If
Trust
it's
me,
a,
trust me,
Hmm?
from somebody that has decimated my credit score and fixed it multiple times in my life, it's not going to be as bad as you think it's going to be for as
No,
long as you think it's going to be.
no.
There's ways to fix it. And I promise you, a couple of years of bad credit is absolutely worth $1 million. I promise.
All the times in my life when I've been working with people, Damon, one of the things that always makes me smile, always put a big smile on my face, was when you would have somebody come in explaining to you why, like, Dave Ramsey says, I have to eat beans and rice and pay this off for the next 5 years. And then I would, just like you just said, debt is nothing more than math wrapped in emotion. Okay, let's look at the math. Okay, this, and here's your situation. And if we do this, here's how quickly your situation improves, and this is how much you'll have in retirement. So if a choice came down to filing bankruptcy, and we'll deal with that, or limping along for the next 5 years, would you file bankruptcy? And people would go like, hell yeah.
Yeah. And, and I think Dave has some good stuff. I mean, it's not the right solution for everybody, but even just from a lot of his stuff could be from, well, once you get rid of the debt moving forward. And
Right,
for some
exactly.
people, it's a great path that they feel comfortable with it. Maybe if they've looked at the numbers and they're still okay with it,
Mm-hmm.
who am I to tell them how to live
Oh,
their
they can
life?
do whatever
Right?
they want to do. I just want them
Absolutely.
to have the information. That's all.
Yeah. And again, it comes down to, you got to have a plan that you understand and that you're comfortable with. And that's why I keep saying, I don't care how you get out of debt. We can talk about all those options.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not here to say everybody that calls me, you got to go bankrupt. You got to go bankrupt. You got to go bankrupt.
No.
No, we look at all of the options and then you decide. It's your money. It's your life, right? It's your retirement. It's your credit score. Whatever you decide doesn't affect me. So, but you can't just limp along. The worst thing you can do, because everything involves a decision. And one of the worst decisions you can make is the decision to keep things status quo.
Yeah, you got to change it.
You got to get out. We got to start doing something different. It's going to be a lifestyle sacrifice. It may be a credit score sacrifice, but it's probably going to be one or both, right?
Yep.
We're going to have to sacrifice something because, again, you got to start thinking about that new word that you may have learned, that hyperbolic discounting. And what would your 65-year-old self tell your 40-year-old self?
So here's, this is maybe an outlier story. But one of my favorite client stories was somebody who came to me and I looked at their income and expenses and worked through their spending plan and finally got a grip on where their money was going. And it occurred to me that she was just really under earning. She was not making as much as she could in her profession, in her job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked her, why haven't you looked for a new job? And she said, honestly, I'm really embarrassed about the size of my feet, and I don't have enough money to buy what I think is a good pair of shoes to go on an interview, so I'm very self-conscious about it, so I just won't go interview. And so I said, what if I bought you a new pair of shoes? And so I did. I bought her a new pair of shoes, and she went on the interview, got the job, made twice as much. She didn't need to file bankruptcy or anything. That wasn't it.
She needed a new pair of shoes.
She needed a new freaking pair of shoes.
I haven't heard that story. I've known you, over 15 years now. It's the first time I heard that story.
Oh, yeah. New pair of shoes.
Full of stories, Steve.
Yeah. Oh, I'm full of something. All right, Damon, on that note.
I think this was good.
Yeah.
I think we got through to somebody.
Hopefully we did. Hopefully somebody is filling out your contact form right now.
Your one takeaway, again, if you can remember anything from this podcast.
Hyperbolic discounting.
65-year-old self doesn't give a rat's ass about what your credit score was when you were 40.
I can tell you, being 65, if I had to go back to my 45-year-old self, I would just like, dude, what the hell are you thinking?
Take it from Steve. If you're 40, this is a 65-year-old telling you.
Yeah.
The crap that you're worried about right now doesn't matter.
God. The stuff I would worry about in my 40s. Oh my God. Okay, Damon, till next time, I will see ya.
Peace.